Are you proud to be an American? I'm not, and in the next few minutes, I'm going to explain why. But first, let's look at the numbers. According to a June 8 to 11, 2026 PBS News NPR Marist poll, 65% answered that question positively, that they were proud, and 35% said no, they weren't. According to the same study, 47% of respondents believe that the U.S. has moved far away from the founding principles the country was founded on, and another 36% believe that the country has moved somewhat away from them. A further 82% said that the issues that divide the U.S. threaten democracy. Before I get into my beliefs, let's talk about the question, are you proud to be an American? I have issues with two words in it. The first is American. America is the name of two continents, and we habitually use the word American to refer to citizens of the United States, as if people in Canada all the way to Chile and Argentina don't have the same claim to call themselves Americans. That's a hubris, and that brings me to the second word, pride. Is pride referring to a joy and recognition of self-worth for our country, or the sin of arrogance that the United States is better than every other country, or that we as citizens are better than everyone else? That later question is a greater concern because behind it, it masks the prejudice and racism that exists in the U.S. since the founding of the country that hasn't been reconciled. Indeed, it's growing, and that is one reason I'm not proud to be an American. Further, according to the same poll, 37% of respondents believe that violence may be needed to get the country back on track, a 7-point increase since October 2025. That alarming statistic is another reason I'm not proud. I believe in nonviolent resistance and protest, not violence, and it deeply troubles me that so many citizens disagree with me. And not only that, but with the ubiquity of guns, automatic weapons, and the high gun ownership in the United States, nearly 42% of households in America own guns. That is a threat not only to liberty, but life. There are many other reasons why I'm not proud, but first, let me say that I am proud of the founding ideals, even if we never fully lived up to them. I believe in the ideals of the Enlightenment and wholeheartedly support that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That is part of the second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence and could be the most important line ever devised by humanity. The line, all men are created equal, starts off with a term, self-evident. In other words, something known without needing to be explained further, we just know it. In the preceding paragraph before that line, the Declaration discusses laws of nature, and that the line, created equal, that we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, is one such self-evident truth. On that, I disagree with. There's a difference between such things as natural laws and natural truth. The former can be scientifically verified, the latter cannot. For example, the fact that copper is conductive is a natural law, but it's not necessarily self-evident if you don't know anything about the properties of copper or electricity. Natural moral laws are what I call universal truths. They're self-evident, but can't be scientifically proven, at least yet, but are as reasoned as a natural law if one actually thinks about them. People have been questioning the line, all men are created equal, since it was first written. Does it mean we're all equal under God? The Declaration specifically mentions God, but is his existence even self-evident? There are a lot of atheists out there who would disagree. I'm a Roman Catholic to my beliefs. How can one see the universe and not know that God created it? But that's a discussion in my video, The Infinite Loop of Existence, if you want to watch that. So, what about the phrase, all men are created equal? The easiest explanation for the Founding Fathers' use of the phrase isn't that all men are equal in faculties and capacities, but that we're all equal in that the rights of all and to all are equal, that everyone, in other words, deserves the same rights and equality. Notice that women aren't mentioned, and at the time they couldn't even vote. Further, at the time those rights were only offered to white men who owned property. So let me rephrase. I believe that we all are equal in worth and are loved by our Creator equally. And perhaps while we're not equal in any given strength or capacity, but maybe the sum of our parts or our souls are equal. I know things like that are beliefs. I further believe everyone is entitled to their own beliefs and opinions, as long as they're reasoned and compassioned. A belief is a strong conviction that something is true, rooted in personal values, faith, or morals. An opinion is a judgment, preference, or viewpoint that is open to dispute and can change based on new information. And here's the distinction I want to draw. I hold my beliefs knowing they're beliefs. I've examined them, I've reasoned through them, and I present them to you as convictions, not as proven facts. The problem isn't holding beliefs that can't be proven, we all do. The problem is holding unexamined opinions and asserting them as facts. I don't believe citizens can fulfill the responsibilities of self-government while remaining apathetic or willfully ignorant. And I believe that we should all grow and learn and change our opinions when they can't be verified. And that's another reason I'm concerned with people's pride in being an American. Too many in the United States assume opinions and call them facts. For example, many were taught that the US is the best, so they're sticking to that opinion without questioning it. Some are apathetic, don't watch the news, don't know what's going on, but have opinions on things that they don't understand or can't explain. Some don't vote, and some that do don't understand the issues, the platforms, or vote for people that they don't like personally. For example, I've heard many people say that they don't like Donald Trump as a person, that they think he's corrupt, but that they voted for him anyway. That doesn't make sense to me. Why would you vote for a man you yourself believe to be corrupt, a convicted felon? Maybe part of the answer is desperation. When people feel the system has abandoned them, they'll gamble on anyone who promises to smash it. I understand that impulse, even as I reject the gamble. But the fact that 30-some% of my countrymen support Trump, no matter what he does or says, is another reason I'm not proud to be an American. Let's look at some facts. The United States has done a lot of good in the world, and also a lot of bad. A topic in one of my other videos titled, "Who Has America Helped and Who Has It Hurt?" We've committed genocide against Native Aboriginal Americans, enslaved millions of Africans, and have never fully been a free, equal country. Those are some of the other reasons I'm not proud, and now, in this divisive moment of our country's semi-quincentennial, we can't even agree what it means to be American. According to that same poll, in a question they asked, what defines being American? 36% of respondents said freedom, liberty, 14% said patriotism, 8% said constitutional rights, and 6% said diversity. I believe liberty, freedom, constitutional rights, and diversity are in retreat in the United States. The First Amendment protects political speech, and over the last 15 years, the Supreme Court has ruled that spending money on politics counts as speech. In Citizens United versus FEC 2010, the court held that the government can't restrict independent political spending by corporations, unions, or individuals. That decision, along with a lower court ruling that followed it, created something new, the Super PAC. A Super PAC is a political committee that can raise and spend unlimited amounts of money to support or oppose candidates running ads, sending mailers, funding get-out-the-vote drives. The one catch is that it's not supposed to coordinate directly with the candidate's campaign. It spends independently. In practice, that line is thin, since super PACs are often run by a candidate's former staff or close allies, but legally the money stays at arm's length, and a recent Supreme Court decision has even changed those strictures. Who funds these PACs? Wealthy individuals writing 7- and 8-figure checks, corporations, unions, trade associations, and other PACs. There's no limit on how much any one of them can give. A single billionaire can put $50 million into a super PAC backing their preferred candidate, and it's entirely legal. Some super PACs are funded in part by dark money nonprofits, which don't have to disclose their donors at all, so the ultimate source of the money can be hidden. Now set that against the ordinary citizen. If you want to give money straight to a candidate you believe in, federal law caps you at $3,500 per election, $7,000 if you count the primary and the general as separate elections. That's the ceiling. Meanwhile, the person who can afford a super PAC faces no ceiling whatsoever. Both sides are technically exercising the same right to political speech, but one voice is capped at a few $1,000s and the other can spend without limit. That's the inequality at the center of the debate, and reasonable people argue hard over whether it's a defense of free expression or a legalized advantage for the wealthy. Corporations aren't people. They're owned by people, so some people have more power than others. That isn't equal. At the same time, some of these billionaires, politicians, and corporations are trying to restrict rights of citizens, privatizing or creating city-states not only in the United States, but abroad. For an in-depth look into that issue, watch More Perfect Union's video. We uncovered the master plan that Peter Thiel doesn't want you to see. But you probably already know some of the tactics, like the nonprofit Heritage Foundation creating Project 2025, which Donald Trump has repeatedly claimed to know nothing about, even as he filled his administration with its authors, and 1 year in, has implemented roughly half of its recommendations. When Jefferson drafted the Declaration of Independence, he didn't simply assert that the king was a tyrant. He enumerated. He submitted 27 specific grievances, a bill of particulars, to what he called a candid world, so that anyone could weigh the evidence for themselves. In that tradition, here is mine. Project 2025 is the blueprint for consolidating executive power at the expense of the checks and balances that protect every citizen, regardless of party, race, faith, or state. Roughly half of its recommendations are already in effect. Among them, gutting the environmental laws that keep our air, water, and land safe, opening national parks, monuments, and public lands to drilling, mining, and logging, including a 211-mile road through gates of the Arctic National Park, while hollowing out the National Park Service by nearly a quarter of its staff, and mandating quarterly oil and gas lease sales regardless of environmental review, at reduced royalty rates that leave taxpayers holding the cleanup costs. Shifting the tax burden from the wealthy onto everyone else. The blueprint's 2-bracket flat tax would raise taxes on a median family of 4 by roughly $3,000 a year, so that the top 0.1% can receive an average $2 million tax cut. Its long-term goal is to replace the income tax entirely with a consumption tax, a sales tax on everything including groceries and healthcare. Attacking the right to vote itself. Gutting the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division, the office that enforces the Voting Rights Act, the office that once prosecuted the Klan, and transferring election oversight to the Criminal Division, so that the officials who help Americans vote can themselves be prosecuted, using a law originally written to protect voters from the Ku Klux Klan. Dismantling the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the agency created after the 2008 crash that has returned more than $21 billion to ordinary Americans defrauded by banks, lenders, and predatory financial companies. Its workforce is being cut by 80% while consumer complaints have nearly doubled. Weakening the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, which protects every American worker, everyone from discrimination based on disability, sex, race, religion, national origin, and pregnancy. Dismantling the Department of Education, half its workforce gone, its programs scattered across 6 other agencies. Title I funding. Funding for low-income schools converted to unaccountable block grants. Special education for 7.5 million children with disabilities shipped to another department. And with it, a federal campaign of curriculum censorship restricting what can be taught about race, gender, and inequality, banning books, and rewriting the story this country tells its children about itself. Civics, ethics, media literacy. The disciplines a self-governing people cannot survive without starved out of the schools. This is not new. The campaign to abolish federal education oversight traces back to the Southern Manifesto of 1956, when the states that had lost Brown versus Board of Education pledged to resist school integration by all lawful means. The blueprint is old, only the packaging is new. Weaponizing the FCC against the free press, the blueprint's FCC chapter was written by the man who now runs the agency and threatens the broadcast licenses of networks whose coverage displeases the president. The largest nuclear weapons buildup since Reagan. stripping collective bargaining rights from federal workers across 18 departments, restricting reproductive and emergency health care access, including rescinding the guarantee that hospitals provide emergency care to pregnant women, dismantling federal diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, and curtailing LGBTQ+ workplace and healthcare non-discrimination protections. Much of this has been done by executive order and administrative rule, some through legislation, including a bill actually named the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. That's not my sarcasm. That's the statute's name. And the pattern doesn't stop at the border. The same doctrine consolidated executive power, extraction as priority, accountability dismantled is being projected abroad. According to a draft resolution obtained by The Guardian, the Board of Peace that now governs Gaza, chaired by the president, seated with his son-in-law and his closest advisors, funded with over $1 billion of your money, has drafted sweeping legal immunity for its members, its contractors, and its international forces from any arrest, detention, or legal proceeding, while granting itself the right to acquire public property free of charge. The board denies any such framework exists. The draft says what it says. And here in Albania, where I'm speaking to you from, the same son-in-law's investment firm is developing luxury resorts against the edge of the Vjosa Narda Wildlife Refuge, one of the last wild river deltas in Europe, a story I've been documenting in my Flamingo Revolution series. Gates of the Arctic, Gaza, Vjosa Narta. These are not three stories. They are one story told on 3 continents about who has the right to take and who is left holding what remains. And there's a further question we should be asking. The Heritage Foundation is a 501c3 tax-exempt organization, meaning its work is subsidized by every American through the tax code. That designation exists because we decided together that certain kinds of work, education, research, charity serve the common good enough to be underwritten by all of us. When an organization uses that status to author a 900-page blueprint for dismantling the very institutions that hold our government accountable, we should at least ask whether our tax code is now subsidizing its own undoing. That's not a legal accusation. It's a civic question, and it deserves an honest public debate. That is my bill of particulars. It is not complete. No honest accounting could fit in one video. Every claim in it is sourced in the description, and I invite you to check them because you shouldn't take my word for it any more than the founders asked the world to take theirs. They submitted facts to a candid world, so do I. These acts help to make the rich richer and consolidate power in the US and abroad, creating oligarchies and multinational corporations, some of which have more money and power than some governments. And what about the president himself? I won't tell you what's in his heart, I'll tell you what he said, and you can judge for yourself. This June, when asked about inflation hitting a 3-year high, he answered, "You know what I really love? I love the inflation." In May, he said, "I don't think about Americans' financial situation." And just days ago, asked about the bipartisan housing affordability bill that passed both the House and the Senate, he dismissed it as a yawn and so unimportant. He later claimed he meant he loved that inflation wasn't higher. You can decide what those words say about his priorities. Further, he's enriched himself as president using the power of the presidency, issued executive orders curtailing free speech, civil rights, attacking dissenters, wrecking the government through Doge, promulgated unconstitutional behavior, conflicts of interest, and those are more reasons that I'm not proud to be an American. I've included sources on these topics if you want more information, they're in the description. These acts curtail democracy, freedom, liberty, and opportunity, and are compounded by a questionable and partly illegal surveillance system in the US that can track one's location, emails, texts, and other data without court orders. Nullification of protections of air, land, and water quality are making people sick and contributing to countless deaths. According to a Guardian 2025 article, air pollution from oil and gas caused 90,000 premature deaths in the US that year alone, and the rollbacks, nay the complete climate change denialism of the administration and other politicians, is creating a more unsafe, unjust world. None of those are reasons to be proud. Attacks on migrants, asylum seekers, USAID, and whole groups of people is shameful and shows a complete disrespect for life and the growing racism in the United States. Let's talk about racism for a moment, because that's where a lot of this intersects. We're all one race, one species, and our DNA is 99.9% the same. So if you're a racist, you're either talking about ethnicity or ancestral geographical origin, or more likely physical characteristics, like skin color. So if you're racist or prejudiced for those reasons, that's not a logical argument. Let me explain. I'm primarily Celtic and German ethnicity. 2,000 years ago, in the British Isles, where most of my family came from, my mix, what one would call admixture, wouldn't have existed yet. And that's true for most people in the United States, Europe, and most of the world today. Somewhere back there, ancestors from different groups came together, sometimes by choice, sometimes not, because history's messy. And here I am, and the same could probably be said of you. If you go back far enough, all of our Homo sapiens ancestors came from Africa. Somewhere along the line, some of my ancestors migrated out, mixed with Neanderthals, and much later picked up the mutations that made my skin white. Migration and mixed mating is part of all of our stories, whether we know it or not. And we all have different tastes and attractions, and what our ancestors found attractive might differ from us due to culture, history, and even media representation. What people in the future will find attractive will likely change as well. In a nation that promises equality, no one should be excluded based on exterior characteristics, views, or preferences. So race isn't biological, it's a social invention. Prejudice and racism aren't reasoned conclusions. It mistakes inherited differences for differences in human worth. So many of the ills in the United States today comes from prejudice and racism. Such opinions make economic inequality, justice, quality of life, and mortality rates higher. They're part of the justifications for ICE and separating children from families and forcing people into cages and treating people in other countries like they don't matter. I'm not proud of any of that. Nor am I proud of those using the banner of Christ to limit the free exercise of religion. Belief in God and Christ, like I said earlier, can't be scientifically proven, at least at this juncture, and of course that completely ignores the fact that not all of the signers of the Declaration were even Christian. If you're proud to be American today, I hope you've wrestled honestly with these questions. I have, and I've reached a different conclusion. As you can see, I have strong beliefs based on the Enlightenment and ideals espoused by my Roman Catholic upbringing, as well as my beliefs in democracy, civics, small r, republicanism, virtue, philosophy, ethics, and morality. Many of the things that aren't even taught in schools anymore. I've written a whole framework known as the social contract of the commons, and what I believe to be inalienable, self-evident rights, as I've documented in the Universal Declaration on Equality, Human Rights, and Justice. I've also formed things like the distribution exchange theory on how to live better lives and protect the things we hold dear, and a framework for understanding the ills we face, not only today, but throughout human history, which I think is prescient to all of what I've discussed earlier. What I call the two claims of history, a framework identifying the single conflict underneath all struggles over land, money, power, artifacts, religion, language, governance, the dead, the living, and narrative. Everything that falls under history, including us, is subject to two competing claims. Claim 1. The powerful have the right to take, define, impose, and preserve on their own terms. Conquest is legitimized by outcome. The uncivilized, the other, the unworthy, the immigrant forfeit their story to the civilized. It's historical determinism dressed as a moral framework, and its justifications shift. Civilization, progress, divine order, manifest destiny, stewardship, truth, and sanity, while the imposition stays constant. Claim 2. Every people has the inherent right to their own land, objects, language, religion, governance, dead, and narrative. Self-determination, equality, and restitution as the moral baseline. Origin confers claim. Consent governs exchange. The issues we face today aren't new. There has always been one group trying to subdue another, and until we all recognize it, we'll continue to lose the battle for a more just, equal nation and world. Those are among the reasons I left America, and why I'm speaking with you today. Am I wrong? I believe questioning itself is the closest thing to a universal truth I've found. Not because it guarantees answers, but because it keeps us honest in the search for them. And the whole point is to strive to be something better. The striving and the questioning are both a duty and a right. In questioning, we accept that certainty is fleeting. Whatever truths we find may last only until a better understanding replaces them. There is wisdom not only in seeking truth, but in accepting the limits of our own understanding. That may be the greatest truth. And if you disagree, if you think my arguments aren't sound, reasoned, or compassionate, then tell me where they fail. I mean that sincerely. Challenge me in the comments. That conversation is the whole point. Why aren't there people in the streets protesting every day? General strikes, more people voting, more media literacy, more voices protecting our freedoms and each other. I fully recognize that one of the biggest issues in the United States today is one of lost opportunity. We are often stuck striving for a better life without the opportunities or time to live it. How can a citizenry with no time, little money, and so many burdens truly participate in a democracy, let alone realize the American dream? The ideals of the United States belong not to one man or nation, but to any striving to live a good and virtuous life of reason and compassion, for those who look over at a distant horizon with awe in their soul and a desire to explore it, to seek new opportunity, not for the betterment of themselves alone, but for all, for those that dream with heart and intellect, and aspire in the premise that the promise of the future extends beyond belief and borders, and the moment, beyond ancestors to those who may walk their own paths in a future not yet written or devised, and that progress that beacons for all belongs to all, thankfulness for a promise fully given in the words yet never fully received. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all people are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. To be stewards of the earth, to raise up, not push down. At its best, the United States is a framework for just governance and a willing, virtuous, and participatory citizenry that lives up to their potential for the betterment of mankind with the opportunities to do so. To breathe free, to be strong and courageous enough to never give up on the pursuit of happiness, for the path is long, but the striving is its own reward, a reward shared that belongs to none alone. At its worst, the United States is the ground for which those who seek to dissolve those bonds and outright use their station and opportunities for the few or the one at the cost to the rest. In our age of condemnation and polarity, do we, our politicians, and our institutions allow people to flourish together with dignity, reciprocity, and equal moral worth? Maybe that should have been the real question in the poll. Civilizations should be judged not by their wealth or power, but by whether they distribute opportunity, preserve human dignity, encourage reciprocal relationships, and allow people to flourish together. To me, a true patriot is one who believes in the ideals of our nation and is willing to enumerate their opinion, to discuss, debate, question authority, speak truth to power, and stand for the many, to try to do good in all things, great and small, and to wrestle with understanding the wisdom in that knowing. To live a life of service for the betterment of all, to be part of that legacy, to learn from each other, to see history as a dialogue with the past, present, and future. If you're wondering how I'm going to celebrate America's 250th, it is by thinking about how we can build a better nation, not by ignoring its history, but by living up to its potential. It is inherent in all of us to strive to be more and to set a better path forward. The rights of citizenship cannot be separated from our duties and obligations to the present and to the future. What do you think? Are you proud to be American?